You have a chumash there? Okay, v'lo tishavu b'shmi l'shaker. You're not allowed to swear falsely in my name. V'chilalta Hashem elokecha, and thereby desecrating the name of Hashem your God. I am Hashem. Do not swear falsely in my name, and thereby desecrate the name of God. So Rashi says, well, actually, that's verse 12. We're still up to verse 11. Verse 11, we were stopped in the middle of verse 11 yesterday. It says, you not steal, and you shall not deal falsely. Lo techachashu. And then, lo teshakru ish b'amito. You're not allowed to lie. So we're up to the Rashi of lo teshakru, you're not allowed to lie. So it already says, v'nishbal sheker yishalem keren v'chomesh, that if he swears falsely about an oath, he has to pay the principal plus 1/5. So that was the punishment. But now we're being taught about the warning. Every time you need a punishment and a warning. So it says lo teshakru. Then it says, do not steal, do not deal falsely, do not lie, and do not swear falsely in my name. Rashi says, im ganavta, if you steal, sofcha l'chachesh, then you'll end up lying. Sofcha l'shaker, then you'll lie again. And then sofcha l'shav l'shaker, then you'll end up swearing falsely. Basically, once you do one sin, the Talmud teaches us this in Pirkei Avos, one sin leads to another sin. You start covering up and you end up doing a lot more things even worse than the initial sin. This is the concept. You'll end up, if you do one thing wrong, you're going to start going down a path. That's why you say, okay, even like you say, oh, it's no big deal. No, it's a big deal. Because that's where it's going to lead to you. It's called a gateway drug. You ever hear the concept of a gateway drug? There's something called the gateway sin. You do a little sin, it leads you to bigger sins and bigger sins. We're in chapter 19 of Vayikra, verse 12. Now we just finished now we're in V'lo tishavu b'shmi. Do not swear falsely in my name. L'shaker. Chilalta Hashem l'kechani Hashem. If you swear falsely, you're desecrating my name. Why does it state Lama Nemar? Why was it said? Because it says, O tisa Hashem l'kecha l'shav. You're not allowed to take Hashem's name in vain. I might think that he's not I might think you're only liable if you say the actual name of God. How do we know, like, even the nicknames of God? So there's an actual name of God, which is what we call the tetragrammaton. You ever hear of the tetragrammaton? Tetragrammaton is the name of God, the 4-letter name of God, which we're not even allowed to pronounce. You can't even say the letters next to each other because we don't know exactly how it's pronounced. So it's Yud and then Hey and then Vav and then Hey. That's called the tetragrammaton. So I might think it's only prohibited to swear falsely with the tetragrammaton. She says, how do I know it's even one of the nicknames of God? What do you mean by the nicknames of God? The things that we refer to God. How do we refer to God? Like, you say like Elokim, or the name Ado and then Noi. These are nicknames of God, which we have to be careful not to say in vain. How do I know there? It says, Lo tishavu b'shemi l'sheker, kol shem sheyesh li, every name. So you have to be very careful, by the way, every name. So let's say, sometimes people say, oh, swear to God. You ever hear that?
I'm guilty of it.
Well, then if you say it, first of all, you shouldn't say it because it's a nickname of God. So Rashi's saying here, any name of God. And secondly, if you're doing it falsely, then you're in a severe violation of the Torah. So if you ever say swear to God, you better be sure that every aspect of it is 1,000 billion% correct. Yes, Elon.
What if I swear on like a non-Jewish, like a different God?
Like on who?
Like Baal, like some random pig.
Baal, you swear. Well, then you're doing a different sin, and that's you're giving special credence to these idols.
Yeah, but let's say I'm getting persecuted by the Spanish Inquisition. What? You have to swear to God, and I don't want to swear to God, so I'm kind of withhold it and be like, ooh, I swear to Baal, or does that also count as an extension of the word of God?
Is the Spanish Inquisition not going to kill you for worshiping Baal?
So anyway, the Spanish. Okay, so bottom line is people should avoid swearing as much as possible, and there's different prohibitions involved. I don't want to try to start giving halachic rulings about situations like that. I'll tell you a story. Rabbi Israel Meir Lau, who was the chief rabbi of Israel, he said his father was writing a book about Kiddush Hashem, about martyrdom in the 1920s. And his people, and he was coming up with really crazy scenarios, like Elon was just speaking about. And people said to him, "Why do you have to talk about that?" He says, "Because there'll come a day when it's relevant. So I don't even want to speak it into existence. I don't want to even speak your scenario into existence. I don't want it to be relevant, so I'm not going to answer it."
That's what already happened.
I understand. So then it's theoretical, so we're not going to get into it. Okay, so the next verse says, "Lo ta'shokes re'acha v'lo tigzol." You're not allowed to cheat your friend. We'll see what that means. We just had this in the Daf Yomi. You see here that we just had this in the Daf Yomi this past week. V'lo tigzol, and do not rob. Lo tawin pu'ulatz clear itcha boker. You're not allowed to keep the workers' wages till the morning, meaning you have to pay your workers the same day. Unless, of course, there's a standard, like, for example, there's a lot of, standard business practices that you pay, let's say, the end of the week or the end of the month, but we're talking about a day laborer, you have to pay at the right time. You're not allowed to be late in the agreed upon time to pay the worker. That's a biblical prohibition. If you do that, you're in direct violation of the Torah. Look at what Rashi says. Lo tashok, you shall not cheat. Zeh kovesh schar sachir. This refers to somebody who does not pay a hired worker. You better pay. Has anybody here ever had that happen to them, that they were hired to do a job and they just didn't get paid? That's a direct problem. It's a tremendous sin. Better that you're the one who wasn't paid than you're the one who didn't pay.
True.
Lo tawin, do not keep the wages overnight. Rashi says, okay. Ad boker. B'schir yom hakatu medaber. This is talking about a person who's supposed to be paid every day. Sometimes you have people come to your home, maybe that you hire them to clean. You have to pay them the same day. They usually expect to be paid the same day. Don't pay them next week. It's your obligation. Your obligation. Sheyetziato mi. This refers to somebody who works during the day. Sheyetziato mi shakar chama, who's done at sunset. So therefore, you have all night to pay him. If a person works for you till nightfall, then you have all night to pay him till dawn. Somebody works at night and he ends at dawn, you have all day to pay him till sunset. You have that 12-hour period. Different verse says, do not let the sun set. That's what Rashi is telling us. So the Torah gives time to the householder to collect his money. So basically you have all night, you have like one period, the day or the night to pay him. I want everybody here to be especially strict about this. When you grow older and you make a lot of money and you have a lot of people working for you, whatever you do, pay the man or the woman, do it on time, be a mensch, don't mess around with that. Yeah. Okay. Then it states, Lo taka'ol chayresh. You're not allowed to curse a deaf person. Why can't you curse a deaf person? They can't even hear. Right? They're not hearing you curse. What's the problem? What's the problem with cursing a deaf person? They don't hear what you're saying. See what Rashi says.
More so, maybe. I have like disrespectful because they're not hearing.
So, I sometimes people say, I never want to speak bad about the dead. Right? People say I don't want to speak bad about the dead. And that's true. The Gemara does say you shouldn't speak bad about the dead, but you should be much more stringent not to speak bad about the living. The living actually have feelings, but you should be sooner to speak bad about the dead than before you speak bad about the living. People say all the time, they speak bad about the living, but when it comes to the dead, they say, I don't want to say anything bad about the dead. No, you're better off saying something bad about the dead than about the living. Think about that. It's obviously logical, but people are more strict not to say anything bad about the dead. It's wrong.
I guess because they can't defend themselves.
Yeah, but they're also not going to get hurt by it.
True.
Bro, maybe they do get hurt by it. Because like when you curse someone, whether or not they hear the curse, it still has like an effect on like their juju, like their soul or whatever. It's like it says a deaf person saying that even though they can't hear it, it can still affect.
So we'll see what Rashi says. It's a very good answer. We'll see what Rashi says. And then the next verse, first we'll finish the verse. Don't stick before a blind man, stick a stumbling block. Stumbling block before a blind man. You have to fear God. Okay, let's see what Rashi says about this powerful verse. Hold on one second. Let's see what Rashi says here. What does Rashi say? Do not curse a deaf person. Rashi says, Eli alacheresh. I only know a deaf person. Minang Rabos called them. How do I know you're not allowed to curse anyone? Says the verse, Ba'am chalo ta'or. Should not curse a leader amongst your people. Im kain lamanem or charash. You can't. Why does it say a deaf person? To teach us ma charash miuchad shu b'chayim, av kol shu b'chayim. Yatsa meishing b'chayim. That's what Rashi says. It means you're not allowed to curse anybody who's alive, but a dead person you're allowed to curse. Exactly. So therefore, so basically, so the next time somebody says, I don't want to speak bad about the dead, you say, no, you're actually, according to this Rashi, it's not prohibited to curse the dead. But but even a deaf person doesn't hear, you're not allowed to curse.
So that means that there's credence to every word we say, and so just if somebody is dead, it's not going to affect them, right?
I mean, the Gemara does talk about that you shouldn't curse somebody who's dead, but from a
No, I'm saying
technical
according to Rashi's
prohibition.
explanation, it's about the effect that takes place. Nothing can take effect if somebody's already dead, right?
Exactly. And then it states, exactly, shkoyach. Then it states before a blind person, you shouldn't put a stumbling block. Rashi says, Mifnei asuma b'davar. Before somebody who is blind, it doesn't mean an actual blind man. It means to somebody who's blind about a specific concept. Somebody who's blind about a specific topic. Guy doesn't know the first thing about let's say business, and you start giving him bad business advice to trick him. Don't do that for him. Don't tell him, sell your field and buy a donkey, which is obviously stupid. You're better off with a field than a donkey. You're only doing this in order to take the field from him.
So it's like, don't take advantage of someone.
Yeah, before a person who's blind on a specific topic. Doesn't mean you're actually not allowed to stick a stumbling block literally in front of the blind man. So that we don't learn that out from this verse. But commentaries say it also includes putting a stumbling block in front of a person who's blind is also prohibited. Now, the Talmud understands it to mean that you can't entice somebody to sin. So for example, let's say you know there's a guy who's an alcoholic, and you put some alcohol in front of him, and you're like, here, just have a little drink. That's putting a stumbling block. Or let's say, a guy's really hungry, and you want to take some pork, and you say, here, can I give you some pork to eat? So you're trying to get him to sin, or like encouraging him to like you say, oh, I'll pick you up and I'll drive you to this non-kosher restaurant. That's putting a stumbling block for a blind person. You're driving him to the place he's not allowed to eat at. So if you do any of those things, then the one who drives him there is committing the sin. Yeah. Yeah, that's what it is.
When I went to Flatbush, they had this around Purim time, and they were having a whole conversation about, like, are you allowed to give gifts on Purims to people who will not say the bracha, like people who are.
So that's the whole question. Are you allowed to give food to somebody who's not going to say a bracha? So the answer is that you could do, because the person will get food anyway. I had this question sometimes. People say, okay, I work for my boss, and my boss is not careful about the kosher laws, and he gives me $50 and he says, go to McDonald's and get me non-kosher food. What would you say about that, Elon? What would you say? So it's like a tricky question.
Someone Jewish asks you to go to McDonald's for them?
Not just someone, your boss. Your boss says, go to McDonald's for me to get me a cheeseburger. And if you say no, you're going to lose your job. Or maybe you're not going to lose your job, but it's certainly not going to make you the teacher's pet. So
You go get something that's not.
No, he's specific. He wants a cheeseburger.
Hey, I'm sorry, boss. you can never
So-
have cheeseburgers.
So, oh, you mean you get out of it?
I think I would go because it's my custom, it's not his custom.
So Guy is saying maybe I'll go because it's my custom, not his custom. Like it's a practical answer, but we have this prohibition. So the ruling actually is that since this guy could get it on his own anyway, you're not really helping him. You're not really putting the sin in front of him. It's not like you went in there and say, hey, can I go get you some McDonald's? He wants his McDonald's anyway. He wants his steak from the BLT, whatever it's called. He's gonna get it anyway. You're just making his life slightly more convenient. So therefore, the halachic ruling in this matter is that you're allowed to do it in this case.
It's still hard.
Yeah, I mean, there are other prohibitions, but sometimes you have no choice. You're not required to give up your job in this particular case. You're allowed to get it for him is the point in this specific case. That's why, by the way, even Elon's reasoning and logic is correct. And this, I'm basing this off of a Ramosha Feinstein ruling. Before people are strict upon themselves, especially as it relates to like parnasa, like having a job, you should try to discuss it with somebody because so that you might see that there's leniencies. Like so, for example, I was speaking with somebody who said, "Oh, I'm not allowed to shower in Shiva," but it's not actually true. Like if you're sweaty and disgusting, and you're allowed to shower, then like so there are the point is that sometimes when you study, you'll realize that there are leniencies built into the law to be accommodating. The law is practical. Hello, Rabbi Eliezer. You saw the kasha, Varnishka? It's on the table in the kitchen. Okay, so then we say, V'yarei milkecha, you have to fear God. Why does it say you have to fear God? V'yarei milkecha. So Rashi tells us, V'fisha davar za'inu masur brios le'daim daito shel zeh l'tova or ra. Because when it comes to putting a stumbling block, when you give them advice, nobody really knows what your intent was. Like you say, oh, I really think you should, this is a big thing. Like, does this look good on me? Oh, it looks great. I mean, really makes you look like the biggest goon in the world, right? But you don't know, nobody knows when you told this person, oh, I really, really think you should quit your job and go live on Mount Everest for a year, whether you're really intending for their best or whether you're really intending to just really give them bad advice. Nobody knows except for you and God. So that's why at the end of this verse, Rashi says, it says, you have to fear God, because only it's something that's given over to the heart. You to say Latovan is kavanti. You can always claim I meant to give good advice. Therefore, Nemar bo v'yareisel Hamakir machshavosecha. God, you should fear God because God knows your thoughts, and so therefore, anytime there's something that only God knows, therefore it says v'yareisel melkecha. Only God will know in this case. Okay.
There's no agent for sin.
So that there is no agent for sin. So if the person, you're not going to get the sin of eating the pork. But if you give him the pork, he's going to get the sin of eating the pork. You're in violation of a different sin, the sin of putting a stumbling block before the blind person. But it's true that the Gemara talks about a case where he couldn't have got it on his own. Like, for example, there's two sides of the river, and you're on one side of the river, and you pass him wine, and he's a Nazarite. He would not have been capable of getting that on his own. So that's where really you're in violation of this, do not put a stumbling block. But if he's just sitting at the table and he says, oh, pass me that wine, and you're really just like making his life slightly more convenient, then it's not in violation of that sin of lifnei eva. That's what the basic idea behind the case of the McDonald's is. You're not putting the stumbling block, you're just helping him.
Who's going to do it?
Yeah, basically. So this is very relevant also. Like a very big question here is, but a lot of times this gets involved in like questions of hiruv, of trying to bring somebody closer like to the faith when you want somebody to get more involved, but in order to do that, they have to violate certain sins. So the question is, would they be doing these activities without you anyway? So that becomes the issue.
to disobey their parents, you mean, what's the example?
Driving to shul.
Or like, yeah, something like that, like basically activities which they would be doing things, let's say, which are anyway not appropriate for Shabbos, but they would be doing it on their own. So can, that's the type of, yeah, Al, yes, sir.
An embarrassing relevant situation.
Okay, are you too embarrassed to share? I'm not pushing you to share. It's up to you. I mean, you brought it up, so.
Someone in my house is withering away, dying. She comes from a culture where they eat pork. The only thing that she's able to put up right with is eating pork. She just does.
She's Jewish?
No.
She's allowed to eat pork.
Oh, okay.
Only Jews are prohibited from eating pork.
So my allowing her in my house to have pork is
There's no prohibition for somebody to eat pork in your house. There's a prohibition for you to eat pork, for you to give pork to another Jew. But if this person who lives in your house wants to eat pork, as long as you don't put their pork on your plate and eat it or cook it in your pots, I'm not saying it's the ideal living situation, but you're certainly not in violation of the Torah. If this woman who's sick in your house needs to eat pork, that's not a prohibition.
thank you.
In fact, it probably is a mitzvah to help her because she's sick and you need to help her, and the only thing she could eat is pork. Okay, so as always, we have feisty discussion.
Controversial question.
Let's go controversial. Yeah.
Okay, this is kind of off topic, not off topic. So what if there's if you look like a trans person, right? And then a person who's Shomer Negia, this is something we talked a lot about at Evo. Like, you have a trans person and a person who's Shomer Negia touches them, is that just a trans person in violation because the Shomer Negia and the person different sex?
Oh, well, I mean, I would just say, first of all, this is definitely off topic, but I mean, it's not time, we've come to Mincha time, but I would say that you might be in violation of not respecting their space and not respecting their dignity. And if a person doesn't want to be touched by somebody and you touch them, but it's not necessarily just it depends on how you touch them. I mean, it doesn't mean anything, like just shake their hand. So they haven't committed a sin, but you haven't committed a sin in of what we think is a sin, but you've committed a violation of their human dignity, you've violated their space, you violated their intent, and there's many other sins which you've committed, not the Shomer Negia one. Shomer Negia it's concepts which you don't even hear about, like before NCSY, so it's a different topic, but I would say that if somebody doesn't want to be touched, then don't touch them. That's a violation of the Torah. You have to respect human dignity. It's a fundamental idea.
More to the point, I think that it goes to identity and intent.
Yeah. Okay, let's daven mincha now. Baruch Hashem.